they tried to erase is echoing again across the desert. More than a decade after NATO's bombs and the cheering headlines, a familiar shadow steps into the light: Saif al-Islam Gaddafi. Older, quieter, unbroken. Western capitals once called Libya liberated. Yet today, families queue for fuel in an oil nation. Hospitals go dark, and militias trade flags like trophies. And in that chaos, one forbidden name begins to rise: Gaddafi. This isn't the return of a rumor, it's the return of a legacy the world believed was buried with his father. A legacy built on sovereignty, oil power, and a fierce refusal to kneel. So why is the West suddenly nervous? Because if Saif regains the keys to Libya, its tribes, its oil fields, its story, the map of North Africa changes, and the old order cracks. Tonight we follow the moves they don't want you to see. The alliances in quiet tents, the messages to loyalists, the plan to take back a nation piece by piece. This is not politics. This is payback. And what the West fears most is already in motion. Because Libya's revenge has just begun. Stay with us, because what's coming next will reveal exactly why the West is terrified of Gaddafi's son. They called it liberation. They said Libya was free. But in the years after Gaddafi's fall, freedom turned into fragments, cities ruled by warlords, tribes turning against each other, and a nation that once glowed with oil wealth sinking into darkness. Finished that the name Gaddafi would vanish like smoke over the desert. But the ghost they buried refused to rest. Across Libya, the memory of Muammar Gaddafi still lives in whispers. Elders speak of free education, full hospitals, and salaries that arrived on time. Younger Libyans, who never lived under him, now ask their parents, was life really better then? And the answer comes with a sigh: at least we had a country. That's the first revenge, memory itself. Because the more Libya fell apart, the stronger the Gaddafi legend grew. Each blackout, each fuel shortage, each militia checkpoint turned nostalgia into rebellion. So when a single message surfaced online, a photo of Saif al-Islam Gaddafi, alive and watching, it spread like wildfire. To some, he was hope. To others, a haunting reminder of the man the West destroyed. Western headlines tried to laugh it off. Gaddafi's son resurfaces. But behind closed doors, diplomats asked the same question. What if he actually returns? Because they know something history already proved. You can kill a man, but not an idea. And in Libya, that idea now has a face again. He is the unfinished chapter of a story they tried to erase. And his next move could rewrite everything. Stay with us, as we reveal how Saif al-Islam Gaddafi is taking back control of the wealth his father built, and why the West is already trying to stop him. When Gaddafi ruled Libya, the nation's oil didn't just flow, it belonged to Libyans. Every barrel funded schools, hospitals, and massive infrastructure projects that made Libya one of Africa's richest states. But after his death, that wealth was carved apart. Foreign oil companies rushed in, militias seized terminals, and Western-backed politicians fought for control of what remained. For years, Libya's riches became everyone's property, except its own people's. Billions disappeared through secret contracts and offshore accounts. The West called it stabilization. Libyans called it robbery. Now, Saif al-Islam Gaddafi is quietly moving to reverse that order. He's reaching out to powerful tribal leaders across the oil crescent, the region that still pumps most of Libya's wealth. Those tribes remember the days when Gaddafi's government paid them directly, not foreign intermediaries. To them, Saif's return isn't about nostalgia, it's about business, justice, and taking back what's theirs. Reports say Saif's envoys are drafting new deals with regional commanders to secure oil exports under Libyan hands again. No middlemen, no Western advisors. And behind those moves lies the same philosophy his father once preached. Our wealth should serve our people, not be stolen in our name. That's what terrifies Western capitals the most. Because if Libya succeeds in reclaiming its own oil, others will follow. Niger, Mali, Chad, all watching closely as Saif's comeback threatens the economic grip France and Europe have held for decades. This is not just a political revival, it's an economic rebellion. And as Libya's tribes begin to rally around Saif's call for national control, the silence from Western media grows louder. Because they understand one truth: if the oil slips from their hands, their influence collapses with it. Stay with us, because the next phase of this revenge isn't about oil or money, it's about an idea spreading across Africa itself. Hit like, subscribe, and personalize the bell icon right now, so you're here when the truth unfolds. Gaddafi's vision was never just about Libya, it was about Africa. He dreamed of a continent united under one currency, one defense force, and one voice strong enough to challenge the West's control. For that dream, they called him dangerous. For that dream, he died. But now, that same vision is whispering back through his son. Saif al-Islam doesn't need to give fiery speeches. His presence alone rekindles something his father ignited: the Pan-African dream. He speaks of sovereignty, of an Africa that trades in its own resources and chooses its own destiny. And across the continent, that idea is no longer isolated. In Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, young leaders are pushing back against old colonial systems. They are rejecting French control, expelling foreign troops, and reclaiming their nation's dignity. Each act of defiance sends the same message: Africa is tired of being controlled. And somewhere in the middle of that awakening stands Saif al-Islam, a symbol not of rebellion, but of unfinished history. The West watches closely, because if Libya, the gateway between Africa and Europe, joins this rising front, the entire balance of power shifts. Imagine it: a united line of nations stretching from the Sahel to the Mediterranean, backed by oil, gold, and self-reliance. To Western policymakers, that isn't progress, it's their worst nightmare. And it's already beginning. From tribal meetings in southern Libya to silent coordination with Sahel leaders, whispers of a green return are spreading. It's not a coup, it's an idea, the kind you can't bomb or sanction. Stay with us, because the fear gripping Western capitals right now has nothing to do with weapons. It's about a belief reborn across Africa. Behind every diplomatic smile, there's panic. In quiet corridors from Washington to Paris, officials whisper about a green return, the possibility that the Gaddafi network is coming back to life. They know what it means. If Saif al-Islam Gaddafi rises, it's not just Libya they lose. It's the narrative they've controlled for more than a decade. Western intelligence reports describe a man moving strategically, rebuilding ties with tribes, former army officers, and business figures who once stood by his father. They call it a threat to stability, but what they really mean is a threat to control. In foreign press rooms, editors are quietly told to keep coverage minimal. The world can talk about Libya's chaos, but not about its resurgence. They can show its ruins, but not its rebuilding. Its fear disguised as silence. Because for years, Libya's collapse justified everything: NATO's intervention, Western aid, and new military bases across North Africa. But if Saif al-Islam returns to power and proves that Libya can rise again without them, the entire Western story collapses. That's why the war on terror narrative lingers, why militia groups still get funding, and why peace talks always fail right when Libya starts to stabilize. Instability is profitable. A strong, independent Libya isn't. And so the same powers that once destroyed Gaddafi's Libya now move in the shadows to prevent its rebirth. Economic pressure, media silence, political isolation. But this time, it's not a dictator they're facing. It's an idea spreading faster than they can contain it. The fear is no longer on the streets of Tripoli. It's in the offices of those who once called themselves liberators. Because if Libya rises again, the empire of influence they built in Africa might finally begin to fall. The world called it the Arab Spring, but for Libya it became a long winter. Now, more than a decade later, the desert winds are changing. The sun they mocked, the legacy they buried, and the dream they destroyed are all returning. Slowly, quietly, unshakably. Saif al-Islam Gaddafi stands at the edge of history. One step away from redemption, one misstep from ruin. If he succeeds, Libya may rise again as the heartbeat of a new Africa. If he fails, the country could sink back into the same chaos the world once cheered for. Either way, the story isn't over. it's only turning its next page. What do you believe? Is this the rebirth of a nation or the return of a storm? Drop your thoughts below. Subscribe to Afro Culture Diary, like, and turn on all notifications because the next chapter of Africa's untold history is already unfolding, and you'll see it here first.